Welcome to the Wire to Wire podcast. As always, it's me, your host Yusuf. Now, without further ado, let's just get right to it. So, journalist Pablo Torre broke the news that Steve Ballmer, the owner of the Los Angeles Clippers, had circumvented the NBA salary cap by paying out additional money to Kawhi Leonard to the tune of $28 million. But now there are new reports indicating that the amount might actually be higher than that, possibly double that amount. But $28 million was the original reporting, and it was through a tree planting company called Aspiration. So I'm going to play a clip of Pablo Torre explaining what happened, and then I'll come back to discuss.
What we know is that NBA executives were suspicious of how Steve Ballmer's Clippers landed the most valuable free agent on the market, Kawhi Leonard, that the NBA did not find that Ballmer got Kawhi by sweetening their offer. But also that in March 2025, this celebrity-endorsed, multi-billion-dollar, allegedly fraudulent tree brokerage named Aspiration, which promises to clear your conscience and your emissions, they file for bankruptcy. And this is where the clue is. What David's looking at with his glasses on is a bankruptcy filing, and there's a list of creditors. The entities to which Aspiration, in all of their alleged fraudulence, still owes the most money. And what I noticed is what David is noticing right now, which is that on that list of creditors, up near the top, above the Boston Red Sox, is an LLC. A tiny little company that Aspiration owes $7 million. And that LLC's name, David, is what?
KL2 Aspire LLC.
And what does it list there under manager or member name?
Kawhi Leonard.
Whose NBA jersey number, just to connect all of the dots here, happens to be what?
Number 2.
So then the question is, the Aspire part of KL2 Aspire LLC, right? Because, okay, he's getting all this money, millions of dollars. What I started doing was scour the internet for any mentions of Aspiration. Any appearances, tweets, quotes, Instagram posts, anything by Kawhi Leonard endorsing Aspiration. And this was hard to find, which also might seem weird, right? Because every other celebrity Aspiration gave money to was well known. There was Drake offering a statement to Rolling Stone. There was Doc Rivers, Kawhi's own head coach. Robert Downey Jr. was cutting his commercial. That was the whole point of paying the A-list Avengers. But the grand total number of times that I found Kawhi Leonard ever publicly referencing Aspiration, 0 times.
Right.
Kawhi Leonard mentioned Aspiration. And so what I started doing was reaching out to dozens of former Aspiration employees. A grand total of 7 of them ultimately agreed to interviews, which is also how I have exclusively obtained this signed and executed document.
In consideration of the rights and benefits granted to company hereunder, the company will pay KL2, which is Kawhi, $28 million in cash during the term of this agreement. Company will pay KL2 $7 million each year of the term.
That is Kawhi Leonard's autograph. The Clippers, however, provided a statement on behalf of the organization and owner Steve Ballmer, which reads in part, quote, "Neither Mr. Ballmer nor the Clippers circumvented the salary cap or engaged in any misconduct related to Aspiration. Any contrary assertion is provably false."
So you heard what he had to say. Now, when this news came out, it set the internet ablaze because they believed that there was some wrongdoing involved. Now, many people were quick to condemn Kawhi Leonard, Steve Ballmer, and the Clippers organization, but Kawhi Leonard has really drawn the most ire from people because they believe that there was wrongdoing that was done on all of their part. Now, the narrative is that they were purposely trying to circumvent the salary cap by doing this maneuver. The NBA has also said that they have now launched an investigation into this matter, and the Clippers have stated that this is not true and they have evidence to support this. Also, I think it's worth noting that Mark Cuban went on X, formerly known as Twitter, and said that he's on Steve Ballmer's side and that there appears to be more to the story. And if I'm not mistaken, I do believe that Mark Cuban went on Pablo Torre, his show, and they had a discussion and he was explaining what was really going on. And I think Mark Cuban mentioned that it was like a 3-hour conversation. So having said all that, what do I make of this situation? To be honest, I will say that this story really seems like one big nothing burger to me. I don't really think that it's salacious or it's that big of a deal. You have billionaire owners that want to retain talent and are being told that there is only a fixed or set amount that they can give to players, which is the salary cap. And once it goes over a certain threshold, then there's going to be additional taxes on those salaries. So these owners, right, like I mentioned, that are billionaires who have spent their entire career circumventing and navigating the federal taxation system and really the global taxation system, are in a competitive league. So of course they're going to try to find ways to navigate and get around players' salaries and things of that sort because this is just what they do. This is second nature to them at this point. And they really want to retain the talent to have a competitive team, to sell out arenas, to sell jerseys and memorabilia and merchandise. So they're going to do what they got to do. This is in their nature. So because these owners come from these business backgrounds, yeah, there's going to be a lot of under the table, wink, wink, hush, hush incentive deals that are done off the books to try to retain talent and also attract talent. Now, there are many of those out there who say that this is corrupt, and I see their standpoint on why they might think that. But to me, I find it laughable that this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back. The reality is there has been plenty of corruption, tampering, and backdoor deals that have been taking place, which have directly impacted the competitive nature of the league, as well as negatively impacted the product itself that we see on the court. So, since the topic is Kawhi Leonard and the Los Angeles Clippers, let's go back and actually revisit that 2019 free agency and that whole entire offseason. Let's break it down. So Anthony Davis, who is represented by Rich Paul of Clutch Sports, who is the supposed owner of Clutch Sports, that has absolutely no involvement with LeBron, besides him just being a client of theirs, that Anthony Davis gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers to become LeBron James' teammate that offseason. And the GM for the New Orleans Pelicans, who was the former GM of the Cleveland Cavaliers when LeBron was on there for his second stint, he happens to be the GM of the Pelicans, and he is responsible for facilitating this trade. Now, after this trade gets made, all of a sudden, the Pelicans get the #1 draft pick, so they get the most coveted college player at that time in Zion Williamson. Am I supposed to believe that all of that happened coincidentally? And let's not look any further than the season that just passed. Luka Doncic gets traded from the Dallas Mavericks to the Los Angeles Lakers in exchange for Anthony Davis. And somehow the Dallas Mavericks end up with the #1 pick for the most coveted college player coming into this season, Cooper Flagg. So this is the second time in a 6-year span that something like this happens. We're supposed to just believe that this is coincidental? How does that work? And while we're asking these questions, maybe someone can explain this to me as well. Rich Paul was the guy who was selling jerseys out of the trunk of his car, who somehow forged a friendship with LeBron and has been part of LeBron's little entourage or his crew for quite some time now. And he just somehow managed to create or build a sports agency to represent LeBron. But LeBron has absolutely no involvement with this agency whatsoever outside of just being one of Rich Paul's many clients. So the question should be asked, where did Rich Paul get the money to start this agency. Is it possible, and I'm just asking a question here, I'm not making any accusations, I'm just asking a question. Is it possible that maybe the money was circumvented from LeBron in a roundabout way to Rich Paul to help him launch this agency? Similarly to how it's alleged that Steve Ballmer circumvented the salary cap space by moving some money through aspiration to Kawhi Leonard? I'm not saying these things are true. I'm just asking questions. So it's interesting to me that this is the line that people want to draw when it comes to there being corruption in the NBA. There has been corruption in the league. But I find it interesting that all of the attention is now being directed to Kawhi Leonard, like he is the first guy to ever be involved in something like this. But there's not even as much attention being directed to Steve Ballmer, who is the owner of the Clippers, who is the man with the funds that was moving the money around, allegedly. So Stephen A. Smith, who I'm going to be discussing in another episode, has all this energy for Kawhi Leonard, but doesn't nearly have as much smoke for Steve Ballmer. Now, even if Kawhi Leonard or his uncle, right, asked for this kind of alleged arrangement, Steve Ballmer could have said no. But if these allegations are true, he didn't. He obliged, and he found a way to get the money to him to try and retain him to stay with the Clippers. But I believe that many times in the NBA, these backdoor deals are made. Those wink, wink, hush, hush deals are made on a consistent basis. And I'm sure Steve Ballmer is looking at the other Los Angeles team in the Lakers, and he probably sees the level of tampering and circumventing that goes on there. If you don't think there isn't any, then you're very mistaken. Anyone who has been watching the NBA for at least the past decade or even longer can clearly see that there's some level of corruption and circumventing going on in the NBA, particularly in the favor of LeBron. Him being able to constantly build super teams, somehow bypassing the salary cap to consistently have the best players on the team. Now remember, in that 2014 going into 2015 season, the Cleveland Cavaliers already had LeBron, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Love. And yet they somehow managed to get J.R. Smith and Iman Shumpert from the New York Knicks for damn near nothing in exchange. And you don't think that there's any tampering or corruption involved in the NBA? So this behavior has been normalized. And it's been normalized and made acceptable by the Clippers' crosstown rival in the Lakers. You think Kawhi was the first free agent to have a list of demands for the organization that he was meeting with? Where do you think he learned to treat free agency in the manner in which he treated it? Who do you think he learned that behavior from? So to me, this is a non-story. If we're going to get to the actual root of the problem and weed out all of the corruption, the tampering that goes on in the league, then I don't really care too much about this one singular incident, because the reality is it is something that is rampant in the league, and the entire system needs to be brought under the microscope and investigated thoroughly. But ultimately, I believe that this falls on the shoulder of Adam Silver, because he has often sought to have a friendly, cooperative partnership with the players rather than him exercising his power and establishing himself as the commissioner of the league, and understanding that these players play for the NBA, therefore they are under his watch and under his supervisorship. So to me, this whole situation is not really a matter of how something like this can happen, because we know things like this happen all the time, whether or not they get reported. Guys that make sacrifices for the team, or they take team-friendly deals when they're eligible for a contract extension and they can get a max contract, right? They'll take these friendly team deals. And then as soon as they retire, they are suddenly given jobs in the organization. Now, what do you think? That decision was made overnight? No, that decision was planned well in advance. It usually goes a little something like, hey, look, if you help out the organization now in regards to your next contract, we will take care of you down the line when you are at the end of your career. And that is how business in the NBA is done. But if this Kawhi Leonard situation is where you draw the line, then to me, I'm going to be honest, it's just selective outrage because this has been made normal by LeBron and his cronies. And that's just the truth. You guys can say all you want about, oh, but this topic is about Kawhi. Why are you bringing LeBron into it? He lives rent-free, blah, 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 blah. No, it's not any of that. I'm just speaking the truth on what is happening in regards to this situation. LeBron, from the time of his first free agency back in 2010, has normalized tampering, and he has bypassed every single rule in the book since he's been exercising free agency in order to serve his interest and to mold the league in his interest. And others around the league have obviously taken note of what he's done, and they're following his playbook. He started this trend. He is the originator of this behavior. So if these allegations are true, then Kawhi Leonard is only just carrying on the tradition that LeBron started. And let's not even open that can of worms of what Chael Sonnen had to say about LeBron's alleged PED usage, or what Victor Conti had to say of the Balco investigation and his assessments of LeBron's alleged PED usage. So there's a lot going on here. I think you guys catch my drift. If we're going to do an investigation on this, then we might as well investigate every corrupting. I'm saying do a top-down audit or investigation of the entire league. And you're going to have to deal with the situation root and stem. But if you're only going to look at this one singular incident and you're going to treat it like it's an isolated event, then to me it's very disingenuous, and you're only curtailing and dancing around the issue rather than addressing the issue head on. If you're going to address this issue head on, then like I said, you need to go at it root and stem. So like I said earlier, to me, this whole situation is a big nothing burger. It really means nothing. And the NBA is going to say that they are conducting a thorough investigation because they want to give the media as well as the fans the confidence that everything is on the up and up. And it's not a big deal. We have everything under control. We are maintaining the integrity of the game. But it's more than just a game. There is a business side to it. Now, to be honest, when I look at what Steve Ballmer did, I don't really see it messing the competitive balance or the competitive nature of the league. It's not like something like this had a cataclysmic effect on the entire NBA and it reverberated all throughout the league. It didn't have any bearing of that sort. Maybe this was just something that he did, allegedly, if it is true, to just try and retain talent because he felt that he was at a disadvantage being the Clippers. Who knows? We don't even know if this is actually true. In regards to Pablo Torre, if the story is true, this is the kind of journalism that can make careers. However, if it's not true and he got any details wrong, or he misread the situation, or he misunderstood the situation, then this is something that can also break his career, because essentially you're putting a bad light on the league. You're putting a bad light on Steve Ballmer, who has a net worth of $120 billion. You're making Kawhi look bad. You're making the Clippers organization look bad. You're going to make a lot of unnecessary enemies by reporting on a story like this. So if you're going to put out a story like this, you better not miss. Because if these allegations are proven to be false, I could see this going very horribly for a guy like Pablo Torre. But if it goes well, I still think he's going to make some enemies, but I do think that he is going to elevate in terms of stature as a journalist or even an investigative journalist. And maybe this will give him the confidence to want to revisit some other things that have happened in the league. Maybe he might want to start with Clutch Sports. Who knows? But this is something that could either make his career or break his career. But in terms of the NBA, like I said, I don't really think this is a big deal just because of how common it is. This is not really telling me anything new or anything that I haven't thought before. And if you're someone who's been watching the game and you've been watching it for a while and you've been following the NBA for at least over a decade now, then unfortunately you've seen the level of corruption that has taken place. It's very hard to believe that this is an isolated, singular incident. But that's all I got for you guys today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your people. You can also follow me and the podcast on social media. You guys can check out my books. All of the links will be in the description. Until next time.